So ladies and gentlemen, sometimes my intros exceed the level of intensity of a module, and sometimes they're on par with them. And really this is one of those where we are on par because this is going to be some really, really intense work right here. And for some of you guys, this is going to be extremely emotional work. And you're going to see what I mean in just a second, because we are going through mental metamorphosis. And I'm going to explain, for those of you guys who don't know what metamorphosis means, I'm going to explain what that process looks like in just a second. But, this is really just wiping the slate clean and deciding, hey, what do you want the future to look like? As I said in the previous module, it is such a balance between, the world of the inner, the world of the outer. It's such a mix between applying philosophies and concepts that you learn in books such as, reality transurfing, the Kabbalion, Think and Grow Rich, The Secret. Actually, don't really like The Secret that much, but still. And, marrying that up with more hardcore technical books such as Atomic Habits, or let's say for a specific part of the business, a great book that I love is a book called Fanatical Prospecting. It's either fanatical or radical. I think it's fanatical. But, those are more granular, right? It's really about marrying the two up. So before I get another person who's sighing and is just like, dude, just give me the fucking tactics. I hear you. I get it, but just please, pay attention, because I'd say this may potentially be the most transformative module in the entire program. And I know that that's hard for you to believe, because we have a 45 module service delivery section. We have the most obnoxious outreach and sales section on earth, with live examples that you're not going to get anywhere else, right? The sort of live examples and references that only someone who's been running an agency for 5 years can give you. You're going to get all that, trust me. But in my humble opinion, I honestly think this is the most powerful module. So, without teasing you guys anymore, let's get straight into it. So, mental metamorphosis. Now, here's what we're going to go over in today's teaching. The 4 inputs that govern your reality, the 3 paradigms of manifestation, identity and hygiene standards, the process of metamorphosis, building a new you, and finally, 5 methods to execute. So real quick, what is metamorphosis? Well, that's a great question. So to put it in technical terms, metamorphosis is when an animal or an insect, after its birth, its conception, it goes through a pretty abrupt change in its cellular structure, its cellular growth, and its differentiation. That's about one of the only things I remember from biology in school, because I found it so freaking cool at the time. Now, a very common and obvious example of that is a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Now, this change in form all the way down to really molecular level doesn't only apply to animals and insects. It applies to you and I. And really what this module is about going through this process. And you'll notice that one of the main aspects of metamorphosis is an abrupt change, right? It's like the time between when a caterpillar then becomes a butterfly, it's a pretty abrupt change. And it goes through this process of metamorphosis and comes out a totally different entity. And that's what's about to happen to you. Now, in order to understand what I'm about to tell you, you need to understand the world of the outer is merely a reflection of the world of the inner. And I feel as though I bit off your ear in the last module about that, but I'm a big fan of Jungian psychology. I prescribe to him more than, for example, Freudian psychology. And I'm also a big fan of reality transurfing. That book is kind of like my, it's like my Bible, my Quran, even though I read all those books. To me, that is, I guess for me, if there's one scripture or one really body of work that I keep coming back to again and again and again, and I learn something new every single time, it is reality transurfing. Because everything you see and experience around you isn't there by chance or by coincidence, right? Now, real quick, let's talk about the 4 inputs that govern reality. First is action. Now, this is an input with the smallest half-life. Action is important, and you'll never get to where you want to be without it, but it's just a technique, a trick, and it's usually fleeting. Now, the next is emotion, and this actually makes your actions come to life. It gives it creativity and emotion. Now, the issue is most people become reliant on it. You need to be able to take action as a hygiene standard without the turbocharge of emotion. But when it actually comes is when you have that high of a flow state, right? I found personally that action with no emotion behind it is that, to me, that's discipline. And that's what people would refer to as disciplined work and diligent work. I have found that action with emotion behind it is when you get into that, that state of flow, right? Where just everything feels effortless. Now, that's that's not going to be you 100% of the time. You might even get to a point where that's you 50% of the time, but usually I find that's 10 to 20% of the time for most people, right? Most of it is just going to be about being diligent and taking action. But then when you have that flow of emotion behind it, then you really get in that flow state. Now, the next input that governs reality is beliefs. And this is how you view the world of the outer. And sometimes these views on the world of the outer are so dead set, so embedded that it can take years to break. Now, when you change your belief, you instantly move yourself to another track. And this is referring to transurfing and some concepts that we're going to get further into. Next is identity. Now, your identity is your self-image. Not just that, but the way the world of the inner dances with the world of the outer. And your identity is a culmination of your actions, emotions, and beliefs. And changing your identity is the quickest way to quantum shift your reality. Now, I know for some of you guys who have never been exposed, as I said, to this level of thinking before, your head is spinning and you're saying, man, let me get this straight. So your beliefs and your identity is more important than your action. I thought in the last module you made fun of people who just thought they could sit and meditate on a rock. Well, no, as I said, I've seen people who have horrible beliefs and don't really have a good identity or image of self, and they actually go on to get good results because they're very heavily weighted, right? They're like a guy who goes to the gym, right? And chest and trains chest and back, but they never train legs, right? They're unbalanced, and that's going to come back to haunt them later down the line, but they can still get them relatively far. But all in all, I found that the biggest changes happen when you change your self-identity, your beliefs, the emotions that you feel day to day, right? Because I may have a day when I'm not feeling like it or a day where I'm not good, but I have gone to a point where I can trick myself into feeling the emotions that I want to. I can trick myself into feeling motivated. I can, if I wake up in the morning, I feel like shit. I've been able through a myriad of different techniques that I'm going to show you guys, not only in this module and further modules, on how to actually baby step myself out of my bed and get it to the point where I sit down and I really enjoy work, right? So I find that if you start from a place of belief and self-identity, everything else just kind of flows with it, right? And as I said, I think for all of you guys, you're going to be able to do action way better than I did, when I started my agency in August of 2016, because as I said, I had to spend so long learning the correct tactics, right? So you're very strong on this side. But when I first started, I was very strong on the identity and self-belief side, right? And that's why I was able to scale up as quick as I was. Now, as I said, some of you guys may be super confused as to why I hold identity and beliefs in such high regard in comparison to emotion and action. And in order for me to explain that to you, I really need to pay homage to Frederick Dodson and the incredible teachings in his book, Levels of Energy. So here are the 3 levels of energy. And by the way, guys, this is available as a printout, so you'll be able to find that right below. Go ahead, print this out and keep it somewhere you will remember. So the lowest level is taking. And here's an interesting little caveat for you. Growing up, that was always the level of energy that I operated in. So bless my mom, I love her to bits, but she grew up as the youngest of 7 in the Soviet Union, right? So she always said growing up to me, take as much as you can because you never know when you're going to get any more, right? Massive scarcity mindset. And by the way, for someone who's growing up in the Soviet Union, the youngest of 7 children, that's actually a pretty good philosophy, right? Like that philosophy probably served her growing up, right? But where we are, right, or where we were, kind of growing up, it wasn't communist Russia level, right? Like things weren't great growing up, but it wasn't communist Russia level, right? So growing up, I always kind of learned that. And I even noticed even going to school, as many of you guys know, I ended up through a very funny situation, basically my mom and my stepdad being married, really just for practicality on both sides. My stepdad saved a lot of money on taxes. And then on our side, I basically got to go to private school. Literally got no other benefits outside of that. My mom and I were broke as shit. She was working NHS minimum wage, retail minimum wage. At some point we were on government benefits. But I went to school with some very wealthy kids, right? And I even noticed myself taking that into interactions in school, like because my friends were wealthy. I would always ask, what can I get out of this situation? That was really my thinking between like the age of 10 to 14, right? Until I started getting basically until I read Levels of Energy and other books similar to it, right? And I understood that you're not going to attract abundance into your life if you have a scarcity mindset, right? So that was actually a paradigm that I lived in for so long, and it took me a long time to basically get out of that paradigm, right? So, we all start from places. And as I said, there's a lot of stuff, like when I talk about everything in this phase, once again, you may be wondering, what the hell does this have to do with running agency? Well, imagine if I'd kept that same paradigm, right? Because growing up, I was always told, take as much as you can. You never know when you're going to get any more. Like, imagine if I had kept that same paradigm in the world of business, right? Imagine how many shitty clients I'd attract. Imagine how many clients I'd sign knowing it wasn't the right deal to take on. Imagine how many unhappy clients I'd have, and how word would spread that, hey, there's this person and he'd rather fuck his clients over than do the right thing, right? So you compare that to the way that I operate now at my agency, where it's physically impossible for a client to join us and not make more money than they're already making. And every single deal is structured in a way that is 100% the case. Now, bear in mind, I've been running my agency for 5 years, right? That's how we were able to sort of offer these sort of guarantees and stuff like that. That doesn't mean you need to do it from day one, but we will get into different sort of pricing, different ways that you can go about pricing, right? And we'll get onto that very shortly. But my point is, even if I took that into the way that I, manage my team, right? If I penny pinched, or if I tried to get people's, my team's salary as low as possible, my team is incredibly well paid, but they're also extremely loyal to me, right? For that reason. So, this is why this stuff is so important, because if you're stuck in one of these levels of energy, you're really not going to be able to evolve, and you're really not going to be able to manifest a better existence around you, because your level of energy is going to seep into it. And remember, in this life, you attract what you are, right? So let's get back into it. Now, the next level of energy is doing, right? And this is action. And then the highest level of energy is being, right? And as I said, this all comes from a book called Levels of Energy by Frederick Dodson. Focus first on being, then doing, and then the rest will come to you. Because if you attain success without becoming the person first, you will always retreat back to your identity. And as I said, ladies and gents, this is why lottery winners pretty much always blow away their money. So let's start off by talking about the taking paradigm. Now, in the taking paradigm, you're asking the same sort of questions that I was asking, when I was up until the age of 14. What can I take, right? What can I take from life? Now, these people, and for example, myself until the age of 14, we didn't even focus on techniques, right? We're looking for hacks, tactics. We're looking for, get rich quick stuff, right? And as I said, if I was stuck in that paradigm, imagine how my business would be, 4, 5, 6 years later, right? If I wasn't exposed to that level of thinking when I was 14 years old. And because I was exposed to that level of thinking, I was able to build up a 5-year track record of, and you can never always do the right thing, but I would say 99.9% of the time, myself, my company, and my team have always done the right thing. And that's a culture that we built. And that's why I think for the most part, I'm extremely well respected in this industry, because people have always had a good experience, and they know that myself, my company, and my team are always looking at how can we give more than we take. So that's the taking paradigm. Now let's talk about the doing paradigm, because I need to do this in order to get that. And these people stay in their current reality due to an absence of consciousness. They don't realize that they are just a puppet. And yes, they're much better than operating life in the taking paradigm, but still in the doing paradigm, you're still the same person. You may have found some new tricks or tactics, but fundamentally, you're still the same person who's looping their life on repeat again and again and again. And in this paradigm, technique is king. Right, that is the biggest focus, and the biggest focus is on doing as well. And these people are the ones who will scour YouTube. Like when they see on YouTube, SMMA tactic, how to get 10 meetings a week on autopilot. Like these are the people who get suckered into it. Guys, I've been in this industry 5 years. I realized there really are no crazy hacks or tactics. There's things that come up, and then usually people always regress back to the thing that is timeless, right? So the people in this paradigm, like they just get so suckered into it. They just get so suckered into these programs and these coaching where someone has basically just repackaged, once again, timeless concepts, renamed it something, and a bunch of people go crazy thinking this is a new tactic. This is going to get me to where I want to be, right? And it's because you're stuck in that paradigm. If you were in the being paradigm, you would always focus on timeless principles. Now let's talk about the being paradigm, because, people in this paradigm, they're always, if there's a problem in their business, they always look first inward, who am I being, right? Who am I being? What things am I not attracting into my life? And what things do I not want to be there that I am attracting into my life? And this is where you are so aligned to your ideal reality, because you need to understand feeling is the closest thing to being. Right? And the focus here is on principles, timeless principles. One of my favorite books ever written is Ray Dalio Principles, right? One of the best investors in history. And once again, you'll see the best investor in history. Imagine what this guy has seen, right? Imagine what investors like Warren Buffett have seen, right? They've seen decades and decades of change, yet they keep succeeding through the stormy seas, through literally the entire world changing over decades and decades and decades. And you ask yourself, why? It's because they have principles. They always have principles they rely on. They don't use techniques, right? They don't use techniques. They don't use flashy tactics. They have principle. Now, those principles may lead to techniques and tactics. Guys, there's nothing wrong with techniques and tactics as long as you have your principles in order, right? And this is where this level of energy, where the paradigm of being comes in play. Now, right below this video, once again, here is another printout. You will never be your highest dream. You will be the lowest version of yourself that you tolerate. Now, this concept right here is why you need to build hygiene standards in your life, because not doing a hygiene standard is the equivalent of not brushing your teeth that day. It genuinely disgusts you to even think about it, right? Because for now, for you, maybe going to the gym or maybe spending an hour a day doing outreach, like to you, you're like, wow, that's going to be tough. But is it tough to brush your teeth? Like, is that a tough thing for you? Because here's the thing. If you build up a hygiene standard and you do not accomplish it, that goes against your identity and your core. And if you didn't brush your teeth for like a day, right? I think you'd be pretty grossed out with yourself, right? Your hygiene standards need to give you that sort of visceral reaction. So pick personality traits and decide which one of them would disgust you not to be aligned with. And they'll develop over time and probably get more demanding. So start easy. So to give you an example with me, a hygiene standard for me is waking up at 6:30. Like the idea of not doing that, granted Saturdays, I take Saturdays off. I wake up at 8 usually, right? I don't have an alarm. I just wake up naturally. But the idea of waking up or sleeping in, like it just seems weird to me, right? And it wasn't always that way. I remember especially the first few weeks actually after dropping out of school, and I already had a 6-figure agency at that point. Because I had so much time on my hands, I was sleeping in until like 9 or 10, which made no sense whatsoever. So it wasn't always that way, right? But I built up that hygiene standard. Not going to the gym 6 times a week, to me, it's just like, it would seem weird. For me, turning on my phone before 1 o'clock, it would just seem weird, like the idea of turning my phone on, right? Because I need my mornings to stay focused and not be distracted. And these are things that you develop over time. And these hygiene standards, if I'm not in alignment with it, I actually feel disgusted with myself, right? And that's in the same way you would feel disgusted with yourself if you didn't shower for 3 days, right? Is showering really such a, is it so crazy to think that, yeah, you should shower every day regardless, right? Then why is it so crazy to think that you should wake up? And by the way, it doesn't need to be 6:30, right? You can wake up at 9. I don't care. But point is, wake up at the time you say you're going to wake up. Keep your word to yourself, right? When you look yourself in the mirror, have you kept your promises? Because how the hell are you going to keep promises to the rest of the world if you don't even fucking keep promises to yourself? All right, let's move on. And you know what? Actually, just to go back on that point, as I said, how do you expect anyone else to respect you if you don't respect yourself? How do you expect anyone else to uphold promises if you don't uphold promises to yourself? Because in this life, you get what you tolerate. Okay? I have seen it time and time again. Clients, people, friends, they will treat one person horribly, and then they'll treat me incredibly because I have a threshold for what I will tolerate. Right? I'm accommodating in general, and that's actually something I've had to work more on in the past few years, right? Because I had such strong boundaries, right, that I kind of had to loosen up sometimes, and as I said, just be a little bit more empathetic at times. But for the most part, like I have very, very strong boundaries, right? And that's something I've developed over the years. And you need to realize that so much, as you know, the saying goes, the things that you own end up owning you, right? And that doesn't only apply to physical things, right? And this is a big issue with physical things. And I've had even friends of mine, they're like, because I'm so, with the things in my life, I'm so like, if something, people in my life wonder, E-man, like, why do you give away so much stuff? I always give away a bunch of stuff to my friends that I don't use anymore. And I'm not very attached to things, like, I remember even one time, my friend was wearing one of my watches. This is a Cartier Santos back in 2019, right? So it's like $10,000 watch, right? Not super expensive, but not cheap. And they lost it. This person lost my watch, right? And I literally was so unbothered, because to me, if you lose something and by the way, look, for the first hour I was like, oh shit, like, oh, I can't believe this happened, blah, blah, et cetera, et cetera. And also I felt terrible for this person just because how guilty they felt, and et cetera, et cetera. And I was actually kind of with them the day that they lost the watch. So like we were together that whole day. But really my point is, I didn't break a sweat. Right? Because for me, if the things you own will own you, I don't own anything where if I lost it, I would have a gut feeling, right? I could lose pretty much anything, right? And by the way, it's taken a long, long time to get there. I used to be really attached to material things because I didn't have many of them growing up, right? Me and my mom, as I said, the way that my mom instilled those things in me is, take as much as you can, because you never know when you're going to get any more. And as I said, that for her, that worked in Soviet Union. So I totally understand that paradigm actually was the right one when you're growing up in the Soviet Union. But as I said, you need to realize that most of the time the things you own end up owning you. And that doesn't only apply to material things. As I said, that can apply to relationships, right? That can apply to friendships. You need to understand that most things in this life are not concrete and they're not set. Even the things that you think are so dead set, so concrete, right? Your house, maybe your partner, maybe your best friend, right? And I even know with my team, we talk in 20, 30, 40 year spurts, right? My best friend, like we talk about, what we're going to do when we're 70, 80 years old, hanging out together, right? But also in my heart of heart, I know that, things in this life change, and you should never, that doesn't mean you can't miss something when it's gone or appreciate it while it's there. That just means do not get so attached. And the other reason that I bring this up is because for most people, they get so attached to a timeline. Right? Everything needs to be in this order. Hey, I need to hit this goal by this month and hit this goal by this month and hit this goal by this month. And I've usually realized life, if you do this thing right, life usually pans out better than you could have imagined. But the route to get there, the destination usually ends up so much better than you ever could have imagined. But the route to get there is so much more different than you could have ever imagined, right? And this is really important to remember as we go into the SBA worksheet, which I'm going to show you in just a second, which I was taught this back in 2017, and I think I credit a lot of this, and I worked with a really, really expert NLP coach. I was very, very lucky because it was a referral from a friend. I helped him with marketing and advertising back at the time, and he helped me with NLP, and he was trained by Tony Robbins, and he was also an incredible psychotherapist. So yeah, all in all, like that dude was an absolute wizard. He taught me some of these concepts, and he taught me about this worksheet, this SBA worksheet, and this is also some stuff I've pulled from another one of my favorite books, Psycho-Cybernetics and Reality Transurfing. Right, this is kind of like your little Bible, right, for mental metamorphosis. And we'll get into this in just a second, and you'll see in there, part of it, and it's one of the phases that I was taught, this Wikipedia phase, which is where you actually write out what your Wikipedia would say at the end of your life. Look, as I said, I map out a journey on there, but I know that realistically, the destination will be the same, but the way in which I get there will be so much more different than I could have ever imagined, right? So just really release your attachment to the journey being exactly as you want it to be, and instead realize that whatever you set your intention for your final destination, you'll probably get there. But the journey in which you get there will probably be totally different. And real quick, before we get on to that, I also want to touch on the fact that, and this is such an important concept to understand, is that in life, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you think you deserve. Because what you think you deserve dictates the actions that you take. Because as I said, 90% of people, they are pressing the gas and the brakes at the same time, right? They're taking action, but because of their beliefs and their identity, they're like, oh no, I don't deserve this, right? Or I'm not worthy of this. Or, they have all these dead set beliefs, and a lot of times they're so subconscious. Oh, rich people are crooks. Like they have all of these identity and these self-identity blockers and all these beliefs that are really stopping them from where they want to, from getting to where they want to get to, right? And they're taking action and they're wondering, shit, I'm not getting results, right? And as I said, this is so important to remember this. In life, you do not get what you deserve. You get what you think you deserve, because what you think you deserve dictates the actions that you take, right? And between the belief and the actions, that constitutes most of your reality. Nothing will change until you change your sense of self. And if you've ever wondered why some people get explosive results and some people just, fiddle away, there's your answer for you. So let's get on to some practical application. I'm going to show you a few extremely key concepts here on how to practically apply all of this. Now, the first is the SBA worksheet. Now you can find a Google Slides link right below this video. You click on that link and that way you can actually just make a copy. Super important, just make a copy, add it to your Google Drive, and then from there you can amend it and change it yourself, right? So you can change the photos, the text, etc., etc. But I'm actually going to show you what mine looks like, right? Let's pull it up. So here it is. Let's get into it. So here is the SBA worksheet. Now it starts off with the story thus far, right? And here, basically what you should do is you should just write your entire story, right? Now I have 2 pages, right? But you can have just 1. And the reason this page is so important, and this is something that was really drilled into me earlier, is it's so important to look back and celebrate your previous wins because most people don't give themselves enough credit. So as you can see, story thus far, write a little bit of a story, right? For example, like let's say your life was a film, right? What would how would they describe it, right? Here I have a village boy who took his family and everyone around him to heights that they couldn't have ever dreamed of. E-Man went on to reform the education system and breed a new generation of visionaries. So Russian village boy, as I said, I grew up in Russia, a place called Dagestan, until I was 4 years old. And then my mom brought us over to London. As you can see, mother saves E-Man from a life of poverty, London move. And, up until the age of like 14, I didn't, like I said, I basically had no friends until I was 11 years old. I wasn't a popular kid in school. I became a lot more social and came out of my shell when I was like 14, 15, 16. But then also I was such a fucking weird kid at school that, a lot of kids, actually 80% of kids didn't like me. And I had a lot of, I always want to refrain from using the word bullying, but like I was outcasted heavily. And like, people would make fun of literally every single one of my moves. Right. So there wasn't much from the age of 4 until, the age of 15, but I started my first business when I was 15. And this is actually an Instagram account called Fuck the Norm, right? Because you couldn't use Fuck the Norm. And you can actually look back on there, the last post, and then go scroll back maybe like 8 months prior to that, and everything from 8 months prior all the way down to the first post, that's me writing. So this was actually like a journal of mine, and I built up this account to a decent following, and then I had someone reach out and they're like, hey, I want to buy this account, or someone actually asked me, can I buy it? And at the time, this is like maybe 9 months prior to actually eventually selling it, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, you want to buy my account? And that's how I got pulled into this whole world of buying and selling Instagram accounts. Right. And for 9 months, that was my business. I would buy, sell Instagram accounts, sell shout outs. And this is around 2014 when influencer marketing really sort of took off on Instagram. Now that business got super saturated, super quick, and died out. Then I've got to start training people to create an income. So I, for a year, I was basically PTing my friends' parents and stuff like that. And then that brought me on to signing my first SMA client, 300 pounds a month. That's actually incorrect. It was 300. I remember I initially pitched 300 pounds a month. And then I ended up repitching 380 because I wasn't charging them monthly. I was charging them weekly. So like I did 95 pounds a week because I thought it sounded cheaper. And that was August of 2016. Now moving forward to March of 2017, that's where I signed my first high paying client, 1,900 pounds a month, a company called Athlete. They've now rebranded to GenFlow. Next, we've got drops out of school to scale business to support mom. So that was April of 2017. March, I'd signed 4 clients and really ramped things up. And then I have first 6-figure agency and traveling the world. And by this, by basically, April, almost May, I was already making what would be considered 6 figures a year with my agency. I was making $10,000-$15,000 a month with all my clients together. Then at the beginning of 2018, I launched my 1.0 agency program that shook up the industry. And 2018, I really continued to refine my processes, scale the agency, and continue to relay everything to the customer community. In 2018, I ended up making $1 million profit. Then I realized like, this is awesome. And guys, to be honest, back in 2018, my business, it was a course business, right? And I was actually making substantially more from my course than I was my agency. And that's the thing that most people don't realize about courses. It's, if you launch a program, it's great in the first year. And then after, by year 3, like you're literally making no sales. Like the education industry is probably the most fickle industry I've ever seen on earth, right? And I kind of started to realize that I'm like, look, this course is great, but like, this is dying out, right? And I need to build something bigger than this. And that's when I realized like, hey, fuck it, I'm cool making a lot less money, more revenue, but a lot less profit by building this into a real education company, because I know this will stand the test of time. And, here we are today, to even going from a what was really just a course business in 2018 to having a real education company to now having a full platform and even being a software hybrid, right? Doing something that's never been done before. So as I said, 2019, I bought the domain greatanc.com and I go all in on my vision to reform the education system. Now, 2019 was actually my first $100,000 a month profit for the agency. And that was actually in July of 2019. And then I think I hit 80K in October of 2018. Yeah, I think I hit 80K in October of 2018. I think I mentioned somewhere else that I actually mentioned somewhere else that I hit 100K. So I was mistaken. No, I actually hit my first 100K month in July of 2019. And then I went on to launch Agency Incubator, right? And that basically broke the internet. If you remember that launch, you remember how crazy it was. And then I actually took the team to Nepal to visit the schools that I funded. I actually paid and funded fully out of my own pocket for 2 schools in Nepal. And since then, we built many more. And now going into 2020, I actually went into isolation for 6 months in Cape Town. And this is during the whole COVID thing. So I was actually stuck out there. And that was an incredible time for me because I was able to tie in processes and hire at the agency. And by the end of 2020, the agency was hitting record months. The client results were getting better and better. And by 2020, 100K months in the agency profit were common. And then going into 2021, I actually brought on 2 performance marketers in April 2021 to scale the agency further. And you can see this is what it's leading to. So here's what the next chapters. So Eman launches the Great ANC custom platform, which changes education forever, which you're part of right now. Then IG Media rebrands, and I've been meaning to do this for so long. And this year is finally the year. I'm serious. I just needed the bandwidth for it. And yeah, we're going to rebrand and takes on its first equity deals. And that's actually already started. By 2025, it's a fully private equity incubator. So if you guys want to know where my vision is with my agency, yes, hitting 100K months profits with the agency is awesome. And, we're even creeping up past that now. We have myself, or at least at the time recording this, myself, Kieran, Danny, and then Luis, and 2 performance marketers, right? So a team of 6, right? And that's awesome. And that can get us to 200K a month profit, I know. But where the real big money is when, now that I've made all this money over this years and I saved, I was very good with my money. I saved my money and I actually multiplied my investments many times over. Now I'm sitting on a really large nest egg. So I'm actually going into a lot of private equity deals, right? So not only do they become a client of ours and we take a percentage of their business, but I'll even inject some money into it so I own some of it and have skin in the game too, right? And by 2025, that's the only clients that we're going to have, right? We're going to scale up our client base probably to 30 or 40, and then actually scale that down and only continue working with private equity deals, right? So only working with 10 to 12 clients overall. And my agency is a full service agency that services them, and I have equity in every single one of those companies. And then you can see Eman ends the year with 10 million net in his account. And this is, 2021, after making a few millions the year prior and then multiplying it many times over through investments this year. This year has been a very, very profitable year indeed. Now, here's my life vision. Now here, what you can throw in is just some photos that mean something to you, right? And just some, words as well. So I've got reformer, visionary, truth seeker, billionaire. Right, and you can see right here on the top left is actually a scene from The Great Gatsby, which is one of my favorite fictional books. But you can see, the scene was so powerful because it talked about how Jay Gatsby, would look up at the stars and knew he was destined for more. And this is kind of the way that I always felt growing up. I was a very lonely kid. It was just me and my mom. As I said, I didn't really have many friends growing up in school, at least until the age of 11. And I also, one curious thing about me is for my birthdays and stuff like that, I would always ask for Waterstones gift cards, like bookstore gift cards. And my mom, even when I was 8 or 9, would come into my room and shout at me because I would be up at 1 a.m. reading. And I remember I had this windowsill right next to my bed and I could look straight up at the stars. And I just spent a lot of time looking up there. I spent a lot of time as well just feeling really honestly just feeling really lonely and kind of misunderstood, right? Instead, I just I had a very weird very weird childhood, and I don't know why. Just this image makes me tear up a lot when I look at it. Just because I don't know. I always looked up, and I don't know why I always felt like I was destined for something great, even though I didn't really have the track record of it. But I don't know. I don't know. My story felt, even at the age of 8 or 9, the things that I saw and things that I went through. and the things that my mom had to go through to get us to London, get me in private school, like it felt like there was something holy. Like I had it felt like there was something otherworldly that was helping me, guide me through my journey. So that's why that one's powerful to me. Then we have Elon Musk, incredible entrepreneur. The company culture that he's built at Tesla and his other businesses is very, very respectable. Then we have Conor McGregor, and I think this is so powerful because him and his wife, right? This is something that's super important to me, right? I think it'll be, I plan on getting married very, very late in my life, but to me, marriage and family is something really important because I want to do it right? I think that's something important to anyone who kind of didn't have a family unit growing up, is that, I would, if I ever get divorced, it will crush me. Like it would be the saddest day of my life. I want to have a family unit. I want to do it right. And I guess that's why that photo means a lot to me, is just having a really strong woman by your side, I think is such a powerful thing. Then we have Drake, outside of, his great music and stuff like that, I just really respect him. Mainly because he stayed on top for so long. So that's what, like, when I think of Drake, like that's what that signifies to me, is like staying on top for so long, because I've seen so many people in my industry come and go, right? Basically everyone, right? And I've been able to stay in this business for a long time because I've constantly kept that joy and that love of the game, right? And I think I can throw in Michael Jordan, this life vision as well, because he had that unrelenting love of the game, right? And he found joy in the little things, and he found motivation in the little things. So that's why I have Drake there, just because you get all the success, right? And it's important to let all that success deter you from the thing that actually brings you all those all those benefits. Then we have the first school that we built in Nepal, or the wireframes of it. That was beautiful moment. And then next we have a scene from The Pursuit of Happiness, one of my other favorite films that I've probably watched 10 times. And I don't know, although like I didn't have a kid, I don't know why, like Will Smith and his the pain he felt and like everything in that film, that felt like that was me, from 2014 to 2016, especially that was the period the things got really rough. My mom hiding bank statements from me because she knew that I would worry about it. Being on government benefits, and like trying to understand what that meant at the time. And like, I remember one time my mom actually worked at Harrods, if any of you guys know that, it's a massive department store in London, and they always have a lot of temps. So she worked there twice, but they never gave her a full-time job. Over the summer they hire a lot more. And I remember, the second time after they told her like, hey, it's been 5 months, or it was like 4 months, but we're not going to keep you on full time. Like I remember her coming home like weeping, because saying how much she needed that job and this and that. And like, I don't know, like just that, having that in, because I always knew from the age of 8 or 9 that like it was my job to be the man of the house. But having that so intensely in front of you, I don't know, I just think it does something to you. So I guess a culmination of all these photos together just give me a whole mix of emotions, but it gets me fired up, right? So here we have my 2021 goals, right? So here at the top, you're going to put the year of. So going into this year, the most things that were important to me were peace, God, and gratitude. And that was kind of my theme of the year. Now for your theme of the year, maybe, I don't know, love. Like for example, like I have friends of mine, in their 30s where like they built incredible businesses, but they want to attract some more love into their life, right? So that may be what it is for you. Or for you, it may be, finances, discipline and transformation, whatever it is that kind of encompasses this year. So my goals for this year is 10 million in cash net. And I'm like, and we're still halfway through the year, but it seems like that's pretty much dead set certain. I guess we'll see with that one. We've got average client retention of 9 months. If things keep going the way they are, that will be no issue whatsoever. And then we have minimum 10 minutes a day meditation, because that's something I really found myself slipping with at the end of 2020. And even in my stage, I even slip sometimes. I get off of my routine. So those are my 2021 goals. Now we have the Wikipedia, and this is where you're going to write your Wikipedia. And guys, go as crazy as you want. As I said, in this life, usually the destination that you ask for, you actually end up getting something better, but the journey there is usually nowhere what it looks like. So although here I get very esoteric, or sorry, I get very specific, the opposite of esoteric, I get very specific, and I get very, very, very specific with what I want in my life and what I want to attract in my life and where I want to live and this and that and et cetera, et cetera. I know that most likely none of this will actually happen the way that I've written it down, but I know that the destination will probably get there. So we can see right here, and by the way, guys, here, be as grandiose as possible, right? You might read this and you're like, well, like, Jesus Christ, this guy thinks so much of himself, but you need to be like, guys, who the fuck is going to be your fan like you're going to be your fan? You should be your biggest fan, right? Now, that doesn't mean, be a brat or, think you know it all, right? You still need to be super, super humble, right? And you can, by the way, you can be humble through your actions. Like, you can still have this crazy self-confidence, but still be humble. And so if you're reading this and you're like, oh, I don't know if I could write so grandiose. Guys, fuck that. You are your biggest you should be your biggest fan, right? And write grandiose like this, because some of you guys are so uncomfortable to even give yourself a fucking compliment. And because of that, it manifests in your life and it manifests in your results. Okay? So let's read this. Iman Gadzhi is a billionaire, visionary, philanthropist, and reformer. He is best known for becoming a billionaire by 50, then going on to dedicate his life to tackle the most pressing issues the world faced. Iman led, people watched. He accomplished feats that left the world in awe for centuries to come. Education reform and his name are so intimately intertwined at this point. Iman truly inspired a generation of visionaries, educating through hundreds of thousands through his teachings and saving millions of children from poverty through education and opportunity. Iman spent his teenage years sacrificing and working on his craft. He knew if he could stay focused and think long term, then nothing was to hold him back. By the age of 18, he made his first million, did it again the next year, and doubled that the year after. His teenage years were spent building the empire he has today. At the age of 21, Iman started investing heavily and took a few million and multiplied it by 5x, ending the year with 10 million net after tax. By the age of 25, that number was up to 25 million net. He could have retired at this point. For the next 10 years, Iman steadily grew his agency/incubator hybrid and investment portfolio while living life to the fullest. He lived 4 lives in those 10 years. He experienced things that pushed the limits of belief. Stories are still told to this day of the things Iman got up to in those 10 years. After his 10-year sabbatical, Iman came back to his full focus in order to imprint his name in the history books forever. By the age of 35, he had a net portfolio value of $50 million. Over the next 15 years, he aggressively scaled his agency/incubator hybrid, having some massive exits for 8-figure and 9-figure sums. He was notorious for his spiritual work and his healing powers. In his 40s, he was calmly thought of as a god, as someone with unshakable focus and determination. He earned that respect of his peers not by force or fear, but by his compassion and warm heart. He lives in his £20 million house in Tregunter Road in London. Iman's mind is still studied in school to this day. He took the philosophies of the world's greatest and blended them into his own vision. He sacrificed everything for his family and the world, and in return, he managed to lead the world's greatest life. Iman used the compounding power of time to amass success and fortune like no other. The education system was never the same after him. So, ladies and gents, yeah, that is super grandiose, right? And that's the way I want yours to be. Dream big, right? Dream big, because you're going to look at this thing every single morning. Now, the last one is affirmations. I will easily goal 1 by date. And I will easily goal 2, right? So write down your goals. And then, here you can tailor your affirmations. So I love to quiet my mind. Meditation is one of my favorite activities of the day. Money comes to me easily and I'm compensated generously for my work. I take pride in working harder and sacrificing more than my competition. Work is not work to me. Work is a form or self-expression in art. I love my work. I hold no addiction or need for social media, caffeine, alcohol, or bad food. I am in full control. I'm present to the moment. I understand that wherever you go, there you are. I'm on a mission to reform the education system. I have unwavering focus. When I lock into a task, I do not get distracted. So, ladies and gents, I think because this is actually my personal one, right? I've actually removed the sort of action steps in between because I've been using this thing for 4 years now, right? So I'm actually going to add the action steps for you guys in the sort of final in sort of the final slide template that I give you. But basically, you wake up every morning, and the reason this is called SBA, and as I said, I got taught this through an NLP coach a few years ago, or at least some of these concepts, and then I kind of patched together the other ones. Is SBA, see, believe, achieve, and that's really the process, right? You need to see something in your mind, right? You need to have a movie playing in your mind of what the future could look like, and that's the only way that you can believe it. And then once you believe it, then you can achieve it, right? So that's why every single morning, and I still do this today, you wake up and you look at your story thus far, right? You look at the next chapters, you look at your life's vision, you look at your 2021 goals, you look at your Wikipedia, right? And then you write down all of your affirmations. And that's my morning routine every morning, pretty much first thing when I wake up. So as I said, I will leave, when I give you guys a template, I will leave it with the actual instructions in between. As I said, I apologize. I actually forgot to add them back because this is my personal one. So I've just removed them just because I've done it so many times that, I guess no need for me. But yeah, I'll make sure on your guys' one, it has the actual instructions in between as well. So, ladies and gents, that is the SBA worksheet. Now, let's talk about your environment, right? Now, a lot of you here could literally never see yourself in a swanky restaurant or buying nice things for yourself. Most of you here could never imagine yourself with a high level of success. Now, I want to make you feel uneasy now by changing your environment and getting you comfortable in these situations. First things first, coffee. Now, people have this idea that everything at high-end restaurants and cafes are expensive. Guys, that's not true. Look, here's the thing. A coffee will be $4 at Starbucks and maybe $5 or $6 at a restaurant that usually costs $200 to $300 a meal, right? Like the two ends of the spectrum of coffee, like they're not going to charge you $20 for a coffee, right? So I want you to invite a friend of yours for coffee, go to a restaurant at like 4 p.m. that's super expensive, because usually at those times they're empty. Go to an expensive hotel lobby or go to like a expensive cafe or expensive restaurant and go there at like 4 p.m., right? And, and go to one of these places that's super expensive and just have a starter or a coffee or something, right? At the end, pay for it, right? If you get a starter and, some sparkling water and maybe a coffee, like it shouldn't cost you more than $20, $25, right? Most of you guys fucking spend that at Chipotle or KFC or McDonald's anyways, right? Like most people don't realize, like a lot of times you can get this much fancier, swankier experience, but you're not actually paying over the odds for it, right? And especially when it comes to coffee, right? I want you to go in these environments. I want you to go in an environment where every other table, a person is wearing a Audemars Piguet or a Patek Philippe or a Rolex, right? Like I want you to get used to that, right? I want you to get used to the fact that potentially you're sitting right next to a table where you're sitting next to a billionaire, right? I want you to get used to that sort of environment. The next thing is Rolex. Now, I'm good friends with a lot of watch dealers, and they're used to speaking to 10 people for every person that buys a watch. Most of you guys think that when someone goes into a Rolex store, every single person goes there to buy a watch. No, like honestly, 90% of people go there just to fucking look at it, try it on, and then they go, right? So go to Rolex or any other expensive watch brand, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, whatever you want, right? Look around and ask to try on a watch. But before you do that, tell them, I'm looking to buy myself a watch, potentially in the next 2 to 3 months as a reward for the hard work on the business. So I don't want to waste your time. Like I want to let you know that I'm not here to purchase today, but I just want to find exact specs and get a feel for what I would like. And then if I can take your card and when it comes time for me to buy a watch, then, obviously I'd love to make sure that you're the sales representative that, helps me with that purchase. And guys, they're going to appreciate that so much. As I said, every other person walks in like, oh, I left my card, or like they fucking make all these excuses. Just tell them, hey, up front, I'm not looking to buy today, but I will be looking to buy soon because, I run a business and I want to get myself this as a reward. So I just want to try on a few specs. And then when the time comes, hey, if I could have your business card, and I would love it if if I could make the purchase as you with you as my sales representative for it, right? And as I said, you can spend 10 to 15 minutes trying on some different Rolexes, some different watches, and then at the end, thank them and take their card. Now, the next thing is area. On the weekend, guys, I want you to go to affluent areas of your city. If you live on the outskirts of a city, go to the most expensive postcode, right? Doesn't matter if it's a trek, go to the area on the weekend. Go into some shops and try on stuff. Look at the wealth, look at the houses and the cars, and realize that money is abundant, right? That's one of my favorite things that I love about, living in London, living in Knightsbridge, Chelsea, where I do. Guys, there's you're not going to get a house here. Like you're not, let alone a house. There's no apartments here for less than $1 million. And I'm talking studio apartments. Like I'm talking your bed is right next to your kitchen, right? If you want a 2-bedroom, like let's say this, if you want a 3-bedroom house in this area, you're not going to spend less than $3 million. That's just not going to, maybe even more, like $3.5, $4 million. Like you're just, the house I'm in right now, which by the way, a lot of people ask like, oh, why don't you buy property or why don't you buy the house you live in? Well, it's because the yields are so dog shit, right? The rental yield on a place like I'm in is 2%. Now, the house I'm in, I don't know the exact quota, but I know there's a house that sold on my street back in 2015 for 5.6 million pounds. That's around $7 million, right? And you know, house prices have been going through the roof. That house, you know, these days is probably worth $9 million, $10 million. Now, that is the biggest house on the street. You know, my house is the second biggest house. So, you know, maybe my house, I'd say probably comfortably is worth $7 million, $7.5 million. Right? So, you know, being around, you know, stepping outside of my house and all I see, guys, literally like, you know, I know for some people, and I mean this with no disrespect, where they live, you know, a Range Rover is like considered like a nice car. Guys, like I hear if you have a Range Rover, you're just like every other bum. And I love that. Right? And I love that because that really builds up your belief and it really shows you how abundant money is. Now, on the flip side, you actually get to the stage where I'm at right now, where actually my favorite place on earth to be is a place like Cape Town. You know, I don't really need wealth around me anymore to like feel motivated or like to feel abundant or this or that. So you actually get to a point where later down the line, you actually kind of want to get away from the scene and stuff like that. But as you're starting to build up your business, it's so good to see all the abundance around you and see all of this wealth around you. So the next technique is something called Force of Future, right? So the SBA worksheet will change your life in the same way it changed mine when I got taught it from my NLP coach a few years ago. Now, during the exercise in the environment section, that will externally and tangibly change your perspective on your sense of self. Now, you've already made so much progress thus far, and you should feel like a different person. And now it's time to really lock it in. Now, I'm not a fan of willpower. I think it's too dangerous and not consistent enough. I much prefer to build systems and discipline so I never have to rely on willpower. That said, occasionally willpower will be needed in scenarios, and this is where this exercise helps so much. Now, here's the exercise. After you build out your SBA and you write down your own Wikipedia page, you should have a vision of your future self. And this vision is all that matters. It doesn't matter who you were before, who you are now. All that matters is who you could be. Now that you have this vision in mind of this person you could become, whenever you want to stop working, whenever you want to eat crap food, whenever you want to give up, close your eyes and imagine you in 10 years standing in front of yourself, extending his hand out and pulling you closer to that reality you envision for yourself. When you have to rely on willpower, this is the best way because it tangibly shows you what life could be like. So really, just to make this clear, when you are struggling with willpower, right, and you're struggling to get something done, you've built this SBA in your mind. You know what the person, you know, what the version of you in 10 years could be like. Imagine them in front of you, right? Imagine you in 10 years in front of you, just extending out a hand, right? It really, really builds this idea of what the future could be like and what your hygiene standards will look like in 10 years and the way that you carry yourself in 10 years. Because remember, you know, in life, you will always regress back to the mean, right? You will always regress back to your hygiene standards. So we want to build that up. Now, ladies and gents, for today's action step, I want you to pencil in a full afternoon/evening, you know, so probably 3 to 4 hours to fill out the SBA worksheet. I want you to print it out and keep it somewhere so you can follow the exercise every morning and night. Ladies and gents, when I told you this was going to be an intense module, I really, really did mean it, right? So I want you to go ahead, fill out that SBA worksheet, and I can, you know, like guys, I'm telling you everything here. I'm telling you openly my mistakes, my lessons, the things I've done right, the things I've done wrong, why things in my past have shaped the way that I am now. Like I'm giving you the full perspective, right? I'm not hiding anything back because, as I said, you know, I don't really believe in just pure business programs, right? Because they don't give you context for how you reach those conclusions, right? And the lessons along the way. So I'm giving you guys everything here, and I'm telling you right now, 2018, right, was a ground, you know, I'd say 2017 really was like my breakout year, right? Where at the beginning of the year, I was making, you know, $1,000 a month, and by the end of the year, I was making $40K a month, $50K a month. Well, actually, no, $40,000 a month. So yeah, I'd say 2017 was my breakout year, but 2018 to make $1 million profit, like this was it, right? This was it. So, you know, ladies and gents, very, very powerful exercise. I know that, you know, even in the last iteration of the program, you know, I've pretty much changed everything since the last program. This is one of the ones that I kept because, man, people had so much, you know, so many profound lessons, and they had so many profound shifts just from this one exercise and this SBA worksheet alone. So I hope you guys enjoy this module, and I'll see you guys in the next one.